The Franco-Prussian War, Franco-German War, often referred to in France as the War of 1870, was a conflict between the Second French Empire of Napoleon III and the German states of the North German Confederation led by the Kingdom of Prussia. The conflict was caused by Prussian ambitions to extend German unification and French fears of the shift in the European balance of power that would result if the Prussians succeeded. Some historians argue that the Prussian chancellor Otto von Bismarck deliberately provoked a French attack in order to draw the southern German states, Baden, Württemberg, Bavaria and Hesse-Darmstadt, into an alliance with the North German Confederation dominated by Prussia, while others contend that Bismarck did not plan anything and merely exploited the circumstances as they unfolded. On the 16th of July 1870, the French Parliament voted to declare war on the German Kingdom of Prussia, and hostilities began 3 days later. The German coalition mobilized its troops much more quickly than the French and rapidly invaded northeastern France. The German forces were superior in numbers, had better training and leadership, and made more effective use of modern technology, particularly railroads and artillery. A series of swift Prussian and German victories in eastern France, culminating in the Siege of Metz and the Battle of Sedan, saw Napoleon III captured and the army of the Second Empire decisively defeated. A government of national defense declared the Third Republic in Paris on the 4th of September and continued the war for another 5 months. The German forces fought and defeated new French armies in northern France. Following the Siege of Paris, the capital fell on the 28th of January 1871, and then a revolutionary uprising called the Paris Commune seized power in the capital and held it for 2 months, until it was bloodily suppressed by the regular French army at the end of May 1871. The German states proclaimed the Union as the German Empire under the Prussian King Wilhelm I, uniting Germany as a nation-state. The Treaty of Frankfurt of the 10th of May 1871 gave Germany most of Alsace and some parts of Lorraine, which became the imperial territory of Alsace-Lorraine. The German conquest of France and the unification of Germany upset the European balance of power that had existed since the Congress of Vienna in 1815, and Otto von Bismarck maintained great authority in international affairs for 2 decades. French determination to regain Alsace-Lorraine and fear of another Franco-German war, along with British apprehension about the balance of power, became factors in the causes of World War I. The causes of the Franco-Prussian War are deeply rooted in the events surrounding the unification of Germany. In the aftermath of the Austro-Prussian War of 1866, Prussia had annexed numerous territories and formed the North German Confederation. This new power destabilized the European balance of power established by the Congress of Vienna in 1815 after the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon III, then the Emperor of France, demanded compensations in Belgium and on the left bank of the Rhine to secure France's strategic position, which the Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck flatly refused. Prussia then turned its attention towards the south of Germany, where it sought to incorporate the southern German kingdoms, Bavaria, Württemberg, Baden and Hesse-Darmstadt, into a unified Prussia-dominated Germany. France was strongly opposed to any further alliance of German states, which would have significantly strengthened the Prussian military. In Prussia, some officials considered a war against France both inevitable and necessary to arouse German nationalism in those states that would allow the unification of the great German Empire. This aim was epitomized by Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck's later statement: "I did not doubt that a Franco-German war must take place before the construction of a united Germany could be realized." Bismarck also knew that France should be the aggressor in the conflict to bring the southern German states to side with Prussia, hence giving Germans numerical superiority. Many Germans also viewed the French as the traditional destabilizer of Europe, and sought to weaken France to prevent further breaches of the peace. The immediate cause of the war resided in the candidacy of Leopold of Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, a Prussian prince, to the throne of Spain. France feared encirclement by an alliance between Prussia and Spain. The Hohenzollern prince's candidacy was withdrawn under French diplomatic pressure, but Otto von Bismarck goaded the French into declaring war by altering a telegram sent by William I. Releasing the Ems dispatch to the public, Bismarck made it sound as if the king had treated the French envoy in a demeaning fashion, which inflamed public opinion in France. Some historians argue that Napoleon III also sought war, particularly as a result of the diplomatic failure in 1866 to obtain any concessions following the Austro-Prussian War, and he believed he would win a conflict with Prussia. They also argue that he wanted a war to resolve growing domestic political problems. Other historians, notably French historian Pierre Milzer, dispute this. On the 8th of May 1870, shortly before the war, French voters had overwhelmingly supported Napoleon III's program in a national plebiscite, with 7,358,000 votes yes against 1,582,000 votes no, an increase of support of 2 million votes since the legislative elections in 1869. According to Milzer, the emperor had no need for a war to increase his popularity. The Ems telegram had exactly the effect on French public opinion that Bismarck had intended. This text produced the effect of a red flag on the Gallic Bull. Bismarck later wrote, Gramont, the French foreign minister, declared that he felt he had just received a slap. The leader of the monarchists in Parliament, Adolphe Thiers, spoke from moderation, arguing that France had won the diplomatic battle and there was no reason for war, but he was drowned out by cries that he was a traitor and a Prussian. Napoleon's new Prime Minister, Émile Ollivier, declared that France had done all that it could humanly and honorably to prevent the war, and that he accepted the responsibility with a light heart. A crowd of 15,000–20,000 people, carrying flags and patriotic banners, marched through the streets of Paris, demanding war. On the 19th of July 1870, a declaration of war was sent to the Prussian government. The southern German states immediately sided with Prussia. Opposing forces. The French army consisted in peacetime of approximately 400,000 soldiers, some of them regulars, others conscripts who until 1869 served the comparatively long period of 7 years with the colours. Some of them were veterans of previous French campaigns in the Crimean War, Algeria, the Franco-Austrian War in Italy, and in the Franco-Mexican War. However, following the 7 Weeks' War between Prussia and Austria 4 years earlier, it had been calculated that the French army could field only 288,000 men to face the Prussian army when potentially 1 million would be required. Under Marshal Adolf Neil, urgent reforms were made. Universal conscription and a shorter period of service gave increased numbers of reservists, who would swell the army to a planned strength of 800,000 on mobilization. Those who for any reason were not conscripted were to be enrolled in the Garde Mobile, a militia with a nominal strength of 400,000. However, the Franco-Prussian War broke out before these reforms could be completely implemented. The mobilization of reservists was chaotic and resulted in large numbers of stragglers, while the Garde Mobile were generally untrained and often mutinous. French infantry were equipped with the breech-loading chassepot rifle, one of the most modern mass-produced firearms in the world at the time. With a rubber ring seal and a smaller bullet, the chassepot had a maximum effective range of some 1,500 meters with a short reloading time. French tactics emphasized the defensive use of the chassepot rifle in trench warfare-style fighting, the so-called feu de bataillon. The artillery was equipped with rifled, muzzle-loaded Lafite guns. The army also possessed a precursor to the machine gun, the mitrailleuse, which could unleash significant, concentrated firepower but nevertheless lacked range and was comparatively immobile, and thus prone to being easily overrun. The mitrailleuse was mounted on an artillery gun carriage and grouped in batteries in a similar fashion to cannon. The army was nominally led by Napoleon III, with Marshals François Achille Bazaine and Patrice de Marqueman in command of the field armies. However, there was no previously arranged plan of campaign in place. The only campaign plan prepared between 1866 and 1870 was a defensive one. The Prussian army was composed not of regulars but conscripts. Service was compulsory for all of men of military age, and thus Prussia and its North and South German allies could mobilize and field some 1 million soldiers in time of war. German tactics emphasized encirclement battles like Cannae and using artillery offensively whenever possible, rather than advancing in a column-line formation. Prussian infantry moved in small groups that were harder to target by artillery of French defensive fire. The sheer number of soldiers available made encirclement en masse and destruction of French formations relatively easy. The army was still equipped with the Dreyse needle gun of Battle of Königgrätz fame, which was by this time showing the age of its 25-year-old design. The rifle had a range of only 600 meters and lacked the rubber breech seal that permitted aimed shots. The deficiencies of the needle gun were more than compensated for by the famous Krupp 6-pounder steel breech-loading cannons being issued to Prussian artillery batteries. Firing a contact-detonated shell, the Krupp gun had a longer range and a higher rate of fire than the French bronze muzzle-loading cannon, which relied on faulty-time fuses. The Prussian army was controlled by the General Staff, under Field Marshal Helmut von Moltke. The Prussian army was unique in Europe for having the only such organization in existence, whose purpose in peacetime was to prepare the overall war strategy, and in wartime to direct operational movement and organize logistics and communications. The officers of the General Staff were handpicked from the Prussian Kriegsakademie. Moltke embraced new technology, particularly the railroad and telegraph, to coordinate and accelerate mobilization of large forces. French Army Incursion. Preparations for the offensive. On the 28th of July 1870, Napoleon III left Paris for Metz and assumed command of the newly titled Army of the Rhine, some 202,448 strong and expected to grow as the French mobilization progressed. Marshal MacMahon took command of 1st Corps near Württemberg. Marshal François Canrobert brought 6th Corps to Chalon-sur-Marne in northern France as a reserve and to guard against a Prussian advance through Belgium. A pre-war plan laid out by the late Marshal Ney called for a strong French offensive from Thionville towards Trier and into the Prussian Rhineland. This plan was discarded in favor of a defensive plan by Generals Charles Frossard and Barthélemy Lebrun, which called for the Army of the Rhine to remain in a defensive posture near the German border and repel any Prussian offensive, as Austria along with Bavaria, Württemberg and Baden were expected to join in a revenge war against Prussia. 1st Corps would invade the Bavarian Palatinate and proceed to free the South German states in concert with Austro-Hungarian forces. 6th Corps would reinforce either army as needed. Unfortunately for Frossard's plan, the Prussian army was mobilizing far more rapidly than expected. The Austro-Hungarians, still smarting after the defeat by Prussia in the Austro-Prussian War, were treading carefully before stating that they would only commit to France's cause if the southern Germans viewed the French positively. This did not materialize as the South German states had come to Prussia's aid and were mobilizing their armies against France. Occupation of Saarbrücken. Napoleon III was under immense domestic pressure to launch an offensive before the full might of Moltke's forces was mobilized and deployed. Reconnaissance by Frossard's forces had identified only the Prussian 16th Infantry Division guarding the border town of Saarbrücken, right before the entire Army of the Rhine. Accordingly, on the 31st of July the army marched forward toward the Saar River to seize Saarbrücken. General Frossard's 2nd Corps and Marshal Bazaine's 3rd Corps crossed the German border on the 2nd of August, and began to force the Prussian 40th Regiment of the 16th Infantry Division from the town of Saarbrücken with a series of direct attacks. The Chassepot rifle proved its worth against the Dreyse rifle, with French riflemen regularly outdistancing the Prussian counterparts in the skirmishing around Saarbrücken. However, the Prussians resisted strongly and the French suffered 86 casualties to the Prussian 83 casualties. Saarbrücken also proved to be a major obstacle in terms of logistics. Only one railway that led to the German hinterland but could be easily defended by a single force, and the only river systems in the region ran along the border instead of inland. While the French hailed the invasion as the first step towards the Rhineland and later Berlin, General Lebeuf and Napoleon III were receiving alarming reports from foreign news sources of Prussian and Bavarian armies massing to the southeast, in addition to the forces to the north and northeast. Moltke had indeed massed 3 armies in the area: the Prussian First Army with 50,000 men, commanded by General Karl von Steinmetz opposite Saarlouis; the Prussian Second Army with 134,000 men commanded by Prince Friedrich Karl opposite the line for Bach-Spicheren; and the Prussian Third Army with 120,000 men commanded by Crown Prince Friedrich Wilhelm, poised to cross the border at Württemberg.